Do you want your business to grow faster? Are you open to new and out-of-the-box ways to drive revenues and increase value? How do you imagine the most successful entrepreneurs and business leaders double, triple, or expand their businesses tenfold or more? The answer is Deals. This is a weekly podcast featuring conversations with business owners, executives, and leaders as we reveal behind-the-scenes details that give you, our listeners, the confidence to pursue your own deal-driven growth. On this show, we discuss a huge variety of deals, everything from large, complex mergers and acquisitions, capital raising, joint ventures, strategic alliances, real estate, affiliate and sponsorship deals, franchising, and more. My name is Corey Kupfer, and I've been supporting deal-driven growth for businesses for over 35 years as a successful entrepreneur, professional negotiator, and attorney. My goal is to help you strategize, plan for, find, and complete deals that will help your company grow faster. Welcome to the DealQuest Podcast. Let's get started. Josh Davis is a 5-time founder, business acquirer, and turnaround expert with multiple exits, including to a U.S. private equity-backed firm. Known for scaling underperforming companies fast, Josh blends grit, faith, and operational excellence to help founders grow with clarity and purpose. As the co-founder and CEO, he built one of Canada's fastest-growing logistics startups, scaling it from the ground up before it was acquired by one of North America's largest transportation companies just 3 years after launch. Today, he runs J.L. Davis Enterprises along with his wife, Loretta, acquiring businesses and consulting founders on how to scale and build high-performance teams and prepare for exit. Grounded in faith and family values, Josh brings a no-fluff, people-first approach to business. He's been named one of Canada's top 40 under 40 and believes true success means a business that serves your life, not the other way around. Josh, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks so much. Appreciate the kind introduction.
So, some of the themes that are just in your bio, my listeners will know are very aligned with what I believe in, including that last statement about, I talk all the time about, this concept of having the business, like my thing is I reframe lifestyle, but like every business should be a lifestyle business, meaning whether that's a venture funded unicorn that you're shooting for, that's really what you want in your life, or if, what they traditionally call a lifestyle business, because why are we doing it, right? If we're not building a lifestyle. But so I want to talk to you about that. I want to talk to you about all your experiences, all the good. I'm sure there was absolutely no bad and it was a total rocket shit up. Never a problem, right? Because that always happens that way. But before we get to all that, I want to take you back to when you were a little kid growing up, maybe 8, 10, 12 years old. What did you want to be? Because I'm assuming a serial acquirer and turnaround expert and, somebody who's run a lot of companies. Probably wasn't it back then, but you tell me.
Yeah, funny you asked that. So growing up, I was very fortunate. I have 2 of my grandfathers. Both of them were successful entrepreneurs. So on my mother's side, he was like the mayor of the town that he was from. And then he also owned a construction company building homes. And then he owned a warehouse company. And then he moved into real estate. So I was fortunate to see that as a kid, him building businesses and having employees and making impact in his community. So I was always inspired by that. And then on my father's side, really, and who's a very close mentor of mine, he was very successful mining entrepreneur. And so, yeah, growing up as a kid, I saw both of that from my grandparents. And so, yeah, ever since I was a little guy, I always wanted to be like my grandparents. And I just really was inspired seeing them, build businesses and community and having employees. And so, yeah, ever since I was a young kid, I wanted to be an entrepreneur. And then the other side of it, I did see, my parents weren't entrepreneurs and they had some, financial struggles and ended up going through a divorce, and which, seeing that as, a teenager, that actually really inspired me to, one, be able to help my parents, seeing them go through some financial challenges. But two, yeah, I wanted to be an entrepreneur like my grandparents so that I could help my parents and also have a stable family life for my kids.
Wow. I love that. I meet some folks who have that background. I did not. I had no examples of entrepreneurs in my family, but I was sort of born naturally one. I had ran businesses when I was 15. I had hired my friends to deliver flyers. So I don't know where, like, if people say, "Where did it come from?" Like, I have no idea. Like, I had no models. You made a very interesting statement, which was because it goes against at least, what the old thinking was, which was, you said that you wanted stability, like, the path that you saw for stability for your family was actually entrepreneurship, right? Whereas, I mean, certainly, I think it's a lot less true now, but certainly back in my parents' and grandparents' generation, what was seen as stable was getting a job in a big corporation, right? Now, obviously, that world changed significantly because loyalty disappeared and people didn't spend 30 years and get their gold watch, that whole thing changed. But it's so, I mean, I certainly feel the same way. Like, not that there haven't been ups and downs in my entrepreneurial journey, but like the fact that I have control over it, nobody can decide, they don't want me working there anymore or whatever it is, right?
Totally.
So very cool. One other question looking back, what was your first deal of any type? Maybe it was something smaller when you were a kid or early in your career. First thing you consider a deal.
Oh, consider it a deal. I think always growing up, I would do something entrepreneurial to get money and try to basically emulate my grandfather's. So, I do lemonade stands, I'd sell baseball cards, I'd do different trading things with marbles and stuff like that as a kid. So I was always interested in making deals and negotiation in the sales side. And then my first like real jump into entrepreneurship was running a painting company. So, one of those kind of student painting companies where you kind of run your own little franchise. And so I was able to do that while going to school. And that was my real kind of experience in actually sales and building a team and delivering on service. And so, yeah, besides the little stuff as a kid, that was my first kind of real step in entrepreneurship.
I love it. So I jokingly said, before I jumped in to ask you questions, that I'm sure, it was, of course, a straight ride up and a smooth ride, and nothing ever went wrong because that's how the entrepreneurial and deal journey goes, and we all know that's so never the case.
Yeah.
So talk to us about, because in your bio you talk about founding 5 companies and having one big exit, right? Doesn't mean the other ones failed, but it means they didn't, right? Because it's all different. And then also, obviously, you've been involved in acquiring other companies and consulting folks or whatever. So you've seen, and a number of those are more, distressed or turnaround situations. So I'm sure you've seen a lot of what goes wrong and experienced some of it. Let's talk about, I know from a pre-call, you talked about some of the earlier ventures weren't quite as successful. So tell us a little bit about that journey.
Yeah, so one of the big kind of turning points in my life, and I talk about this a lot. It really took me 10 years to really get successful and figure out entrepreneurship. And so in my early 20s, I mean, typical thinking, I need to go to business school, I need a business degree, and then start off a business from there. And unfortunately, my grandfather, I was very close with, ended up getting sick with cancer. It was interesting thinking back on it now. Dropping out of school, it was difficult because, I wanted to finish business school and I also enjoyed being with my friends, but then my grandfather was sick and he was my mentor, my hero, like someone I really looked up to. So I made the decision, I left business school and I spent 2 years with him. And so those 2 years with him, we did a lot of, I was helping him. My grandmother had passed away shortly before that. So I was helping him with, dealing with his finances and learning about business. And he was taking me around and teaching me, how he would do deals back in the past. And he used to acquire distressed mining properties and turn them around and things like that. So that was really what got my kind of deal making and hearing about stories and seeing his business partners that would come and meet with us and just hearing all that and all the excitement of the deal. So that's what really I think planted a seed for me wanting to get into acquisitions. And then interesting enough, he was a sailor, so like he would build a company, sell it, then he would go off sailing. So he wanted to do one last sailing adventure. He knew it was kind of going to be his last big one. So our plan was to sail from Vancouver, Canada to the Sea of Cortez of Mexico. Where he actually spent time with my grandmother years ago. So we ended up going on this big sailing trip. The first 4 days were just, like, out of a movie, catching fish, it was just beautiful, not big waves, it was very calm, and, then eventually we ended up hitting this massive storm, and unfortunately, during the storm it was really interesting, my grandfather went for a nap, And during the storm, that's when things picked up. Looking back on it now, maybe it was like 40-foot waves. It felt like it was like 100-foot waves. And, something even reflecting back on it now, we definitely weren't prepared. Like my grandfather was the most experienced. I had a couple buddies from school with us and one of his friends that had sailed with him. And it was like one of those things that like, the storms just don't test the boat, it tests your crew, and there's, like, a lot of parallels in business and leadership that I took from that. Fortunately, we ended up making out of that storm alive, and after it was done, my grandfather woke up, and he came up to the deck, and he basically couldn't believe what happened. He's like, "What'd you guys do to my boat?" And I was like, "We just went through 3 or 4 hours of pretty much hell."
And he slept through the whole thing.
Slept through the whole thing. He literally woke up right at the end of it when things were totally died down. So that was my first, like, kinda real, life-threatening experience, and also just realize, some of the stuff that I still take with me in business is, like, there's gonna be storms in business, there's gonna be challenges, but it's really important when you're getting through that stuff that you got the right you're prepared, with the right team and the right systems, and I can honestly say it during that storm, we weren't, and we were very fortunate to make it out alive, but there's always a good learning lesson from something like that.
I'm getting this vision of Forrest Gump and you being Captain Dan. That storm scene, but hey, like he's like, "Bring it on, come on," and they end up to be like one of the only shrimp boats left.
I had my own similar experience to that, yeah. Basically, after that, after my grandfather passed away and then, my parents went through their challenges, I was really kinda left thinking like, you know, what am I gonna do with the rest of my life? Do I go back to business school? Do I go into entrepreneurship? Like, what do I do? And I was fortunate enough to go into the mining industry after my grandfather. I ended up getting mentored by some of his old business partners and old geologists, and that really gave me, exposure to acquisitions and due diligence and, acquiring a company and integration. And so even though it wasn't my own deals, it was just like being in that proximity and learning from these guys really it was basically like getting my MBA in deals and acquisitions through that. So I was pretty fortunate to be able to have an open door there because of my grandfather. And then yeah, from there I did a number of different things. I was in real estate and technology, and I ended up setting up a few deals in the mining space as well. And I definitely had some success, but I didn't really like at that point. The first 10 years, I really didn't understand, the real importance of building teams, building systems, and building a real company. It was more focused on just my own sort of grit. I just gotta make this happen and do the next sale and just push as much as I could. I thought the key to building a business was just like me outworking the competitors and continue to develop and learn. And it definitely got me some success, but then I had a number of things that didn't work out. So yeah, that was up until about 28. And then once I hit 28, I just realized I really wanted to learn how to be an entrepreneur. I wanted to learn to build and scale and be a leader and how to build teams and things like that. So I kind of went on this journey and started reading every business book I could find, every biography. I started to get around mentors. I joined a very successful peer advisory mentorship group with guys that were way further along than me. And then I just went on this journey of just being a sponge and learning and growing. And so that was a big shift at 28. And then a few years later, I married my amazing wife, Loretta, and Loretta, we're very opposite as in our skill set. So like I said, I'm like dropped out of school, dropped out of business school, kind of school of hard knocks and learning by trial. And then my wife on the other side graduated from one of the top universities in Canada, commerce degree, very systems, process minded. And so really once we got married and we made the decision after our wedding to start a business together, my skills with, leadership, putting right teams in place, sales, and then her systems, processes, mindset, and combining that together, that's what really I had my breakthrough. And that's where, we can talk a little bit about it, but basically from startup to exit to US private equity was about 3 years. And I think all the hard knocks and failures and lessons I learned the first 10 years marrying my wife, who became a business partner, kind of got me over the hump to where we're in a pretty good position now, but there was a lot of challenges we had to get through to get to where we are.
Yeah, there's several things in what you said that are interesting. I mean, it's all interesting, but that raised some things for me. One is this concept of, I mean, whether it's scaling up or strategic coach or map, or like there's a million of these operating systems, right? Or EOS, all right. They all have a concept of basically a visionary, right? Leader, and then somebody who executes or operates, right? And that's the key thing. And you see it in some of the big, partnerships with the Steve Jobs and Wozniak and you see, I'm that visionary guy as well. And I have operators in my business and they're, as important than me because like I can't do what they do. And in fact, the joke is, Don, who runs my whole law firm, we have an ongoing joke. It's been with me 15 years. Like, and they'll say, I'll come back from some retreat or course or, just whatever. Right. And I'll be like, oh, we're going to go do this. Right. And she, she's great. She's very calm. She'll say, okay, you say you want to do this. You say you want to get it done in the next couple of weeks. Where does it fit in with the 7 other priorities that you previously gave me? Because we're not getting all of them done. Okay, good enough, right? And second of all, you only understand 3 of the 22 steps that it takes to get this done.
Yeah.
So we're not going to get it done in 2 weeks. It's more realistic. We'll get it done in 6 weeks or whatever it is. Okay, you're right. And I don't want to understand the other 19 of the 22 steps that it takes. Right? That's what it's for. Or somebody, or one of my lawyers who's more, in that mode on the legal side. Right? Yeah. So that I get that. So that combination is amazing, and you have it in a spouse, which is a whole other dynamic on how that really works well for some people, but not for not for others. But
Yeah.
sounded like it works well for you too.
It does. I mean, that's the thing. We reflected back on this. We just celebrated our 10-year anniversary. First time we got young kids, a 6-year-old and a 4-year-old. So it was our first time really being away from our kids and just reflecting on that time when we were building the company, working 12, 14 hours a day.
Yeah.
Everything revolved around the business. I don't know if I would suggest that, getting married and then jumping into business together. It was definitely very hard. And that was actually part of the reason which led us to ultimately, and we had a couple other partners as well, but we ended up exiting the company partly because my wife was pregnant with our first child, and we were just kind of reflecting on like, especially our business. It was 24/7, 365. It's a transportation logistics industry. We built software, and she basically was like, when we have our child, I don't know if I want to do operations like this anymore. So as much as it was a really great experience for us, it definitely made us stronger. We definitely had some challenging days being a newly married couple and building a business that's scaling rapidly and having all these responsibilities and having all of our finances tied up in the business. It was quite a 3-year wild journey, drinking by the fire hose for sure.
I love it. So I want to delve into that company, that journey a little more. But first, you also mentioned a like a mentoring or peer group. I'm curious which one was it? Was it one of the national ones or was it some local?
Yeah, I interviewed with all the main ones, EO, YPO, there's
Yeah.
Tech in Canada here, there's McKay's CEO Forum, and I was actually fortunate enough, I was gonna choose one of those, but then I got a private invite to one that's been around for it was about 20 years, and it's not anything public or websites, and
Got it.
so I ended up choosing that, and man, that was a huge blessing. There was, guys that, um, they're not like super visible. They weren't in the media, but
Yeah.
they were, build substantially large businesses across North America. And it was, I was the youngest, significantly younger. There was guys 60s, 70s, and one in his 80s. And yeah, that was, I was very fortunate I got invited to that, and I'm still a part of it. I've been a part of it for about 13 years now, and, it's been a total game changer for me.
Love it. Love it. All right. So let's talk about the journey and the company where you had that nice exit. So it's like first of all, 3.5 years from startup to PE acquisition is impressive, no matter what the industry is.
Yeah.
Um, 'Cause obviously, you had to build some level of scale for PE to be even
Yep.
interested. So talk to us a little bit about that journey. Did you before the PE firm came in, had you raised other capital? Did you grow did you grow mainly, organically, or did you do anything through acquisition? Like, how did
Yep.
you scale so quickly before we even get to the PE deal?
Basically, we had a very good friend of Loretta and mine, who was in our wedding party, and we're very close friends. So he was raised in the trucking industry. So since he was a teenager, and so when I was trying to make a decision of what Loretta and I were going to do after we got married, he was pitching us on joining him in the transportation industry. And so, because I was involved in acquisitions in the mining industry, acquiring distressed mining assets and putting them together, he basically pitched me on why don't we do the same thing in transportation. And so my wife's background, she had a commerce degree in business, but she also had a specification in transportation logistics as well. So she was working in one of the biggest shipping companies in the world. So basically, between the three of us, it it was I was working on it with him for about a year before we actually made the decision, and so basically what we did was we launched a brand new company. We ended up bootstrapping the whole thing. He ended up bringing in his brother as a partner as well, and, yeah, it was basically just a startup. Yeah, it was from there, we started the business, and then we started realizing that it was a pretty old school industry, especially in Canada. So, like, most of the transportation companies, weren't heavily, using software and technology. A lot of, like, even the way that they dispatched and routed trucks, was manual processes, paper systems, and things like that. And so my wife's mind, is really like systems, process, and software. And so when she was working at the shipping company, she got very involved in understanding the software and how it would help, streamline the operations of the business. And so her company would send her to learn about the software, and then she'd come back it's a large international company, and teach the Vancouver office, different things about the system that can make their lives easier. The thing that she found was, because it was a large international company, she wanted to make changes to the software, but obviously you can't, because what's being done in Vancouver may not make sense in Europe, it's et cetera, et cetera. So, I can take any credit for this, but her and our business partner at the time really wanted to build in-house software. And so we ended up going to market and trying to find, software that would fit our business. We couldn't find anything that really met our needs. And so reluctantly, from my standpoint, I was like, okay, we can, like, okay, let's do it. We had 4 full-time software developers,
Wow.
and which is very expensive. I mean, things
Oh,
back
yeah.
then when we were doing this back in like 2016, there's like no AI and stuff to help you program and double check code and things like that. So it was a very big process to go through that. We did it quite quickly. We were very fortunate. So my wife, from an operational mindset, working with our lead programmer, and then he would oversee the programming division. After about 8 months, we were able to build it and launch it. And Corey, once we actually did it, so I went from this guy being like, wow, we're spending way too much money on it, to like, this is absolutely amazing. We can customize it to the way that we want it. We could build all the visibility and metrics, and watch what the gross profit was per head. We could design things and create profit share structures for the team members. And so at first, I wasn't super happy about it. Once it was built, I loved it. I started gamifying it, making it so that it could help me understand the business and our team members. And when we actually built that, it really helped us in recruiting. So, like,
Yeah.
basically, in Western Canada, there wasn't a lot of companies that were tech focused logistics like we were. So we were able to pull, MBA grads out of school, bringing people in the industry that knew nothing about transportation. And so that really helped us bring on, A players and top talent. So that was one part of it. And then the second part of it was acquisition. So we didn't take any outside capital. We ended up obviously getting a significant amount of bank debt to be able to keep the lights on and things like that. And then we would just go after looking for, either distressed transportation, warehousing businesses, and then we would go in, take over the company, fix this, bring in our own software. So we bring our software, our systems, our processes, we bring in team members, change management, and then we'd scale them. So obviously the first couple were very challenging and a lot of late nights and hard,
Especially on the integration, right? Usually. Yeah.
very challenging. And then after we did, a couple of them, it got easier. So that was part of the strategy for the first 3 years. We just kept finding deals and acquiring them and merging them into our entity. Yeah, so kind of the keys to success, which were a lot of challenges, were one, building our own software. That was a game changer. Two, acquiring companies and building our own operating system on how to put in our system to make it, stable and then scale. And then the third thing was, recruiting. So recruiting top talent. And obviously the fourth, which is, I say this and you got to be careful with it. Revenue will solve a lot of problems. It doesn't resolve everything, but we just got really good at building sales and systems to be able to scale the business. So those were
Yeah.
kind of the key things.
Let's take a break from the show for a minute so I can tell you about an incredible resource my team and I have put together for you. Secrets of Deal-Driven Growth, Creative Ways to Grow Your Business Even in Challenging Times, is a powerful ebook that helps you take DealQuest podcast episodes and apply them to your own life and business. This is the ideal tool for anyone looking for creative ways to grow as deal makers, and you can get yours now. It's as easy as heading to coreycupfer.com/workbook and downloading your copy. While you're there, you can also consider joining our dynamic deal-driven community of founders, experts, small business owners, and entrepreneurs. Now back to the show. In terms of the acquisitions, were you doing all cash deals? You're just buying out these distressed companies, keeping some of the employees on, and then obviously applying your systems, processes, technology, etc.
Yeah, like some were later on. Like later on, we started doing more deals that had some actual value into it. But the original deals, we'd structure creative financing deals because the businesses, it was hard. It's hard to evaluate businesses like that, especially in transportation, because a lot of the times the businesses were very asset heavy. So trucks and trailers and, land and things like that. But really, it wasn't profitable from an EBITDA standpoint. So,
Yeah,
and we weren't backed by any, financial investors. So we had to figure out creative ways to do acquisitions.
yeah, yeah. So yeah, I'm sure a lot more contingent upon ongoing revenue and stuff like that. I would assume
Profit share structures and things like that, essentially.
stuff like that, as opposed to any kind of big check up front, or guaranteed payments. Yeah, yeah. It's interesting because I know a little bit about this industry. I've had a couple of clients in various aspects of it. I've got a entrepreneurs organization friend out here in EOLA who is in the business, and then actually there's an EO guy out of Mexico who pitched at the Deal Exchange conference, which I ran this year for. It's the Deals Conference for Entrepreneurs Organization around the Deals community, and he had they built this robust software for logistics. I mean, it sounds very similar in Mexico.
Wow.
Right? On, all the stuff. Oh, look, GPS, we can see where they're routed. We can,
Yep.
make it efficient in terms of the routing
Yep.
and, maximize the use of, there's a lot less downtime for the,
Yep.
for the trucks and for the, and then they even integrated in, some other elements around, I think, payments and stuff like that. So, it sounds very, very similar. And they're a very interesting guy, and I think, they're trying to break into the US market, right? They've been pretty successful in Mexico, but obviously, getting into the US is a different game.
It is, and, logistics software, especially because the logistics industry just kinda went gangbusters during COVID as well, and, like, people started realizing how important transportation and trucking was, so, it's a pretty competitive space, and even with
Yeah.
us, like, we still own the software, so we license it back,
Oh, nice.
but as far as, like, going to market, we tested it a little bit, but it's a lot of competition, so we decided to not actually do anything with it. We still develop it and license it, but we haven't took it anything to market.
Got it. Yeah, it's interesting. Yeah, I remember he was saying, that the guy from Mexico was saying that there's a lot of, like, his big thing was that they bring a lot of stuff together, but yes, you can get a lot of these components elsewhere these days. But that's interesting. So I wanted to jump into, obviously, with no confidential details, but generally the PE deal. And it was and I wasn't, let me sort of enter it through the tail, Leah, that you just said. There's a lot of times when somebody's, when a PE buyer, any kind of strategic buyer, any kind of buyer's coming in, that they don't let you, keep the IP, outside the deal. So it's very interesting that they were willing to, do a deal where you still own the software and your licensing, and back.
Yeah, so it's quite a lot. Like they actually sold it again with their group of assets. They had one of the biggest transportation companies in North America, one of the biggest in Canada. So, and they had a number of different assets, and they're doing acquisitions. I think they acquired us because we were different, especially in Canada. Like we were an asset light model, so we would have trailers, but we wouldn't own any trailers. It would be like full wet leases, and we were tech focused, and we are very like sales driven focused and customer service focused. So yeah, they didn't really, I guess, see the software as a reason why they were purchasing us. So I think that's why they ended up buying the company, and then we kept the software. And we loved the software as well. Like especially like we actually named the software after my daughter. And so my wife really loved the software as well. So yeah, it wasn't something that we offered up as part of the sale. And yeah.
Interesting, interesting. So in terms of the deal more generally, did you go through a process? Did you decide to put it on the market? Did they just approach you? Like, what? How did that come about?
When we first started the business, we talked about potentially exiting one day as we were planning the business. But funny enough, it's almost like I blocked that out of my mind, and we were just growing and scaling the business and having so much fun, challenges, but also so much fun.
Sure.
And I honestly never even thought about selling. I just thought we'd just do this forever. And especially me, like I wasn't from the industry, but once I came into the industry and I really got my hands dirty in the industry because I really wanted to understand it. So I started by dispatching and understanding how everything worked and studying the metrics. And so I grew to really love it. And so, like I said, that first kind of even thinking about selling again was when my wife brought it up when we were driving to work. So I did bring that up with my partner and our other partner. And, because our partner had been in the industry for about 20 years and we had some other ventures that we were doing together as well. Yeah, it just kind of came to that process where we felt as a team like, yeah, now's the right time to sell. Even though deep down I didn't necessarily want to. It was like Corey, it just got to the point where it was like all of our capital is tied up in this business. Every time, and it's a low margin business as well. So every time we grew and scaled and go to the next level,
More capital.
more capital. And so like once we like talked to mentors and our accountants and lawyers and stuff, we realized like we couldn't continue self-funding and growing at the pace that we were. So yes, we ended up having an M&A advisor. We ended up taking it to market. Had a number of meetings with different PE firms and other transportation companies. And yeah, we were fortunate to find one that was, well capitalized out of the US, a private equity backed firm. And then they also had some Canadian roots and North American transportation roots. So we got kind of the best of both worlds. We had a strategic as well as private equity backing. And so that was one of the things that we wanted if we were gonna sell our baby, and something that I mean, we could talk about this as well. It's like I say this sometimes. It's almost like when you, especially if you're on any sort of structure for a couple years post sale, which we were. It's almost like giving a child up for adoption, and then you're living in the same house.
Right.
So fortunately, in this situation, it was an amazing learning experience for me. So like working with like a top transportation company, amazing executives and, like working closely with the CEO and the CFO, like that experience and then understanding how things work from like a board perspective on the private equity side. So I worked closely with them for 2 years and the business fortunately, kept scaling and growing during those 2 years. And then eventually they resold again and I ended up moving on. But yeah, it was amazing experience overall. I mean, there were some challenges at the beginning integration, but overall it was an amazing experience for me personally and great for my team. And that was the one thing that even looking at it now, like I saw my company just won another award, and a lot of my key team members are still with the company, and
That's phenomenal.
we've got, growth opportunities and stuff. So even seeing it from afar, like I've been out of the business for over 3 years now. Um, yeah, I feel good about what we did, and the business has continued to be part of a large entity and growing and scaling, and people have opportunities to grow there. So yeah, as much as I miss the team and the business, I'm very thankful for the buyers that we were able to find.
I love it. And if you're willing to share, was your deal, did you have a rollover equity piece in your deal? Because you noted that they sold again, so did you get a second bite of the apple or,
No, we our deal was yeah, our deal was our deal with a two-year transition, and yeah, that's the
well,
way
yeah,
we
it sounds like it was a great deal anyway, but, in
it
some
was.
industries, it's pretty common to, for these, especially if it's a roll-up firm doing a bunch of these acquisitions to have you roll over some equity and, and then sometimes that works and sometimes it doesn't, but
Yeah,
So, all right, I want to talk about what you're doing now, but before we go there, I want to talk about this post sale, because in my ongoing, joke about how everything's easy and it goes smoothly, which, you have totally dispelled. Of course I was kidding, in terms of the challenges to even build it and then figure it out, and and the deals that it don't work and whatever. You also had an experience that I've has been a pet not a pet peeve, but like, an important subject for me to bring up,
yeah.
which is this conversation of what happens with even very successful exiting entrepreneurs post exit. So you wanna share a little bit about that? And then I wanna talk about, more about what you're doing now.
Do you mean post me actually stepping down as CEO, or the transition?
I mean, you tell me what, what's of interest. I know that when we, did our quick pre-call, you
Yeah.
mentioned something around identity and stuff like
Yeah, yeah.
that. Something came yeah.
So yeah, what I would say is, once we sold the business, the way that our structure was set up, so I was still the CEO, so I was still overseeing the business entirely. I think typically when they do acquisitions, it gets kind of rolled up together, but in our case, it was a 2-year structure, and this is the way that we negotiated, that we'd run separately but get the support from them. And so for the first 2 years, nothing really much changed. I mean, one thing that was it was funny. The one thing that was I talk about this with my wife. During that transition, the one big thing that was like a huge weight off my shoulders was just having that financial backing. So like having, the in-house accountants and the CFO and the fund taking care of all the back end financial stuff, like not having to worry about, you know, the payments as we're growing and managing cash flow and all that stuff. So that being taken off my plate enabled me to really flourish and focus on the people, the systems, the growing, the sales. So that part was really great. And then so that was that. Then obviously once our 2-year deal was up, then I had to make a choice. They were very great to me, offered me an opportunity to continue on. I really struggled with that. So for about 6 months, I kind of tried to figure out, do I want to continue on with this bigger entity? Do I want to do my own thing? And I had this real battle because I love my team, I love the business, but then things weren't necessarily the same anymore. Like it just came to the realization, like, I don't own this company. It isn't my company anymore. And whatever the main entity needs to do, I need to comply with that. And so I just kinda hit, and then my other partners were gone as well. They left as soon as the transition. My wife had been out of the business for 2 years, and I'm there by myself, and I basically just realized it just wasn't a fit for me anymore, and the business had to turn a little bit more corporate, and it wasn't this small business anymore. It was a part of a big entity, and I didn't wanna be the bottleneck, and so I made the decision to step down, and which was really challenging, I mean, even that day of letting the team know, and there's a lot of tears and a lot of, yeah, I mean, stuff that I didn't realize was going to come up, letting the team know. And yeah, once you got through that, handled the transition, it was interesting. The day after we were finished with that, when my emails were turned off, it was like how quiet it was. Like it was just like for honestly for weeks, I'm checking my emails. I'm not even like I'm getting no emails in there. And I had other business ventures, but nothing like this, 100 plus, in-house employees plus contractors and different people that are wanting something from you. It's like there's just a different level of quiet. And so, I did a number of different things. I had young kids. I had another son born at that time. So we had he was about 6 months, I believe, and then a 2.5 year old. And, so I just, focused on being a present dad. We went on trips, took our mothers to Italy with us, and we did a whole bunch of family things. And I was just like the present dad, and I was really, really enjoying it. But at the same time, missing that, you know, the building a business and having team members and all that stuff. And it was funny. I didn't realize it at the time, but eventually my wife kinda woke me up and was like, "Dear, like, love having you around, it's great you being present with the kids, but kinda like, hey, it's time to get going and do something again." And I would joke with her, like, her family were from small towns, we come from humble beginnings, we don't come from a lot of money. And so I even said, like, "Is this our chance to kinda sell everything, go move and do farming and live on a ranch and,
Right.
live the good life?" And she's like, "Dear, one, you're not very mechanical. I don't know if you can handle the animals." Um, and she really like spoke into my life being like, you love people, you love building businesses, you love building leaders. That's what I think you need to be doing. So after about 6 months of me being around the house, she kind of gave me a bit of a kick. And then that's when we could talk about, I'll pause there, but that's when we set up the family office and consulting and things like that. But that was a little bit of that journey.
Well, it's a perfect segue, see, because I wanna talk about what you're doing now with all that, with the family office and the deals you're doing. So, yeah, why don't you tell us about, what you built, and you've been doing what for the last, a few years now, right?
Yeah, 3 years now. Yeah, so what we basically did was we set up a family office, so all our own capital. And, originally the idea was, let's use our operating system that we built. So our people, our technology, our systems, our performance, our sales. Funny enough, you mentioned EOS. I wish I read EOS and scaling up. I think I got them on my wall here. When we were building up the business, we kind of came up with our own, our before the Davis operating system because we didn't know there was anything like that out there. But I ended up reading it later on in the career. And so the plan was, let's make investments into businesses and help them scale and grow. And then maybe I would sit on like a board and advise. And so it was really interesting, Corey. As we were doing that, every business that we would invest in, we saw the same challenges, starting with people. So getting the right people in the right seats and the right leadership. We saw needing the right technology and the right systems. We saw, needing that strategic plan and the performance and the vision. So as we're going through it, we were like, maybe we should start a consulting arm that can actually go in and help these businesses rather than it just being, just us and a few of our team members. So we ended up launching JL Davis Enterprises Consulting, focusing on people, systems, performance, growth. And then as we were doing that and we started getting in the market, we started to get a lot of deal flow. So like founder-led companies, they come to us and they want, Loretta and I with our, reputation and how we treat people, wanting us to buy their business. And we realized we only have so much capital. We're not a large private equity firm. And we had to be very strategic about the deals that we wanted to do. We realized a lot of these founder led businesses were where we were a number of years ago. And even though we don't want to invest or buy in their business, they're kind of stuck. They don't know what to do. How do they put the right people in the systems and how do they get out of the weeds? And so that's how we created JL Davis Enterprise Consulting, which started off as something that we were going to do in house for our own deals. And then we opened up to the market. So that's what we've done. We're doing a couple acquisitions in that space right now. We bought an HR consulting firm. We just purchased a executive search firm. So to make sure that the first thing in any business you go into is the people side. So you got to analyze, make sure you got the right people in the right seats. You're developing leaders. You're putting the right people and making sure they're successful, building performance, tying performance to growth goals and things like that. And so, yeah, we've been doing that for about 2 years. We're growing quite rapidly right now in Canada and actually in the US as well. I'm looking at doing an acquisition down in the US right now, and yeah, we're super excited about that part of the business.
And is that a fee for services model, or do you take any equity pieces or kickers, along with the consulting, or like what's the model on that?
Yeah, so right now it's fee for service. So we bundle packages. We do, depending if you want one specific service, then we can do that, or we package it. Maybe they'll use us on a monthly retainer. So we help them, with recruiting, putting in the right recruiting systems. If they need us to go out and headhunt people, technology, they want us to come in, put in CRMs and streamline operations, make sure everything's connected with their QuickBooks and their financial systems. Yeah, so we have a full range of services, and our kind of I think our value proposition is, we're operators first. So we're not consultants. We're not just HR consultants. We're not just leadership coaches. We do have recruiters and leadership coaches and consultants, but we also have a team of operators that put systems together that actually work in the real world. So that's really what our value proposition is. And like I said, we're scaling quite significantly here in Canada and expanding into the US. So we're pretty pumped on it. Yeah.
Nice. Just one last area, and then we'll wrap up with my final two questions. On the companies that you are making investments in, it's interesting for me because I know a lot of people have exited, and whether it's through a single family office, or whether it's just as an angel investor or whatever, they like think, okay, I'm going to start investing in other companies, and there are some people where they love that, it's great, it works out, and there's some people who actually are like, first of all, the skills it takes to figure out who to invest in are very different than the skills it takes to build your own business. Second of all, some of them don't love the fact that they don't have any control. They're minority investors. They see what's going wrong and they would do it differently, and they don't have that influence. So I've had a mixed bag of, how post exit, successful exit, investors relate to their investment journey, and they have stories of what went wrong, what went right. What's
Yep.
been your experience?
Okay. It's really interesting you mentioned that. So, I mean, similar when I first started out, my plan was make investments. I don't need full control, maybe 10, 20% sit on the board. But
Yeah.
similar to what you're saying, like I found when we would do that, I didn't necessarily not like having a little bit more control. And then the other thing we ran into was like we would explain to the founder what they need to do to scale, right? So first of all, get yourself an executive assistant. We got to get you out of the weeds. We got to get you out of all the sales meetings. You can't problem solve everything. So it's interesting. Once we started doing that with the founder, it was like to the point where they were like, I don't even really wanna do this. Why don't you guys just buy me out? So, it did happen in all the cases, but I would say that was a bit of the challenging part, and especially us, Corey, like, we're buying smaller businesses, right? Like, maybe they're doing anywhere between 1 and 5 million bucks in revenue, and so that's a different business, right? They don't have full out, management teams and the best systems and technology, so it was interesting. My idea post exit, "Oh, I'll just make investments, I'll sit on board, and that'll be it." But then once I realized, I'm like, I actually like getting my hands dirty and I wanna fix it and I wanna do things. So we do make select investments with the right founder, like someone who still has the energy to grow and scale, people who are willing to release control and step out of the weeds and want to evolve. They align with our, vision and values. But I'd say that's the most difficult part. If you're going to make an investment, you really got to make sure those things align. And so as of right now, we pivoted more where we're doing 100% acquisitions for now. At the same time, still evaluating deals, but it's really challenging because you think you can invest and you want to see the business grow and scale and get an ROI. But if the founder that you're investing with isn't ready for that, yeah, I mean, it can be very challenging.
Yeah, fair, definitely, appreciate you sharing that. So if people wanna find out more about, all your services and what you're doing, where should they go?
Yeah, so the easiest way is, well, two things. Follow me on LinkedIn. I'm very active on LinkedIn, sharing about the journey, the ups, the downs in our acquisitions. So you can find me at Scaling with Josh Davis on LinkedIn, or you can go to our website, jldavisenterprises.com. For anyone that's interested, you can find me on LinkedIn. People can DM me the word scale. I've got a framework that my wife and I built on how we put the right people in place, the right systems, and then growth by acquisition. So that's another way. I mean, it's something that even if people aren't ready to work with our consulting arm, we love to give people kind of frameworks that we use that help our business grow because yeah, I wouldn't be where I am today if people didn't share their frameworks with me. So anything I can do to give back.
Absolutely love that. My final question on the podcast, Josh, is always about my highest value in life, which is freedom. And for me, that means everything from freedom around the world for people from oppression to why I've been an entrepreneur for decades and haven't had a boss. What does freedom mean to you, and how does it impact your life and business?
Oh, that one really hits me. Yeah, going back to when I was a kid, I seeing my grandparents and them building a business, and they eventually got freedom. So they ended up got the freedom to choose what they wanted to do in life. And so I would say up until that exit, it was a total grind and lots of challenges and sleepless nights and stress and gaining weight and all that stuff. And then eventually, once we got that exit, we were able to have the freedom to choose to do business the way that we wanted. So yeah, I feel very blessed and fortunate that it took, 15 years to get there. But now I'm in a position now, and that's why we set up our family office and we're still small. I have a lot of, there's private equity guys and different guys who want to invest with us. And hey, why don't you go bigger and grow and scale and do bigger acquisitions? And part of the reason why we're not doing that right now is because we like the freedom. We like to be able to make decisions that align with our values of our family and our vision. And then a big thing that was very important to my wife and I is supporting the next generation. So now, with us not having any outside capital or dealing with any private equity companies, we can make investments directly from our company. Kids at risk. We help rescue kids from trafficking. We do all these different things that we don't have to answer to anyone, but we can make those decisions with the profits of our businesses. So, you saying the freedom thing, I mean, it's really the reason why I'm continuing doing what I'm doing through JL Davis Enterprises, because we have the freedom to choose who we invest in and then the organizations we support to help the next generation.
Love that. Love that answer. Definitely aligns for me. And it's been great having you on the podcast.
Man, this has been awesome, Corey. Thanks so much for having me.
Thank you for joining me on this episode of DealQuest, where we help you understand how deal-driven growth can be your ticket to freedom. If you are interested in finding out more about my law firm, the services we provide to entrepreneurial and growing companies across industries all over the country, and my partner Brian Megan and I, and my amazing team, just head over to kupferlaw.com. That's kupferlaw.com. And if you want to follow more of my content, head over to my LinkedIn page where I post regularly. I'm Corey Kupfer. Until next week, wishing you the freedom and financial prosperity that I know your DealQuest will bring.